What's going on YouTube? Nathan back here with another video presentation. Hope everyone had a great week. Hope everybody's staying safe. Before we get into the video, I just want to take this opportunity to thank you guys for the support you have been giving to the channel, particularly on the recent video that I did. I appreciate all the comments and the support that I got from you guys, but not just with that video, just really the support on the channel as a whole. The content the topics I've touched on, very muddy waters. And again, if y'all are enjoying the content that you're seeing, consider hitting that subscribe button along with notification bells on. And also too, different topics, we can talk about. Put them in the comments, man. The 8th inning program for MLB The Show 20 has been released. I'm going to record a video sometime this weekend, let you know where I'm at with that. Let's get into the video. As you see the title of this video, I'm talking about StephenASmith. StephenASmith for the past now 2 days has pushed this argument, this conversation that I agree definitely needs to be had. But in this video, I'm going to talk about where I stand with it. Okay, I'm going to first talk about my take. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Stephen A. has been pushing this argument that with the recent hiring of Hall of Famer Steve Nash by the Brooklyn Nets, that there's white privilege. In this video, I'm going to talk about how I feel about him being hired, and then I'm going to talk about networking. I'm going to talk about KD, Kyrie, what I feel, the other coaches that gotten passed on. But I'm really just going to let you know why I stand with it. Now, if you hear me say Stephen A. quite a bit, because I'm asking him questions, because there's questions that I want to challenge him on this conversation. So, Steve Nash being hired by the Brooklyn Nets caught me off guard, completely surprised me. I honestly, truthfully believe this is I want to see where this goes. I'm not saying that it's going to fail. I believe that this is a guy that Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving need, particularly as a top tier, particularly the top tier players that they are. Steve Nash brings a lot to the game of basketball. I feel in some instances, I think he has been disrespected, but that's another subject for another video. But I'm real curious to see this move. Now, I'm gonna hold that as I get into the video. But I'm gonna now jump to my next point. Stephen A. But before I do that, I just want to wish Steve Nash nothing but the best. I think he's gonna do great in Brooklyn. I know the expectations are going to be high, but now Stephen A. Stephen A. obviously, let's just call it what it is. Stephen A. is not happy with the fact that Steve Nash got the job over Mark Jackson, Sam Cassell, and Ty Lue. I'm using those three because he mentioned their names quite a bit. His reaction to it was, quote, "Ladies and gentlemen," I have it here on my notes, excuse me. "Ladies and gentlemen, there's no way around this. This is white privilege. This does not happen for a black man," end quote. Stephen A., I have a question for you. And I really want this answered. If you're mad at Sean Marks and the Brooklyn Nets for hiring Steve Nash, why aren't you mad at Kyrie and KD, Kevin Durant? Why aren't you not calling them out? Because these are the players, these guys signed off on wanting him as their coach. Now, Jacques Vaughn, who I think did a good job handling the Brooklyn Nets while down in Orlando in the bubble. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I think he's now the highest paid assistant. I believe that Steve Nash wanted Dirk as his assistant coach, but Dirk Nowitzki was not ready to come back to the game full time. So we know that Jacques Vaughn's going to be valuable to Steve Nash and as him as a young coach. We know that Kenny Atkinson, as much of a job that he did to get the Brooklyn Nets to being respected, relevant, he just wasn't the coach for KD and Kyrie. And I also too think inconsistencies and injuries. I think in this case you had to make that kind of move. Do I think that was right? No. But here's the thing, Stephen A. You don't know the conversation that Sean Marks, who is the GM for the Brooklyn Nets, general manager, for the Brooklyn Nets, you don't know the conversation that he had with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. You don't know that. We don't know if Mark Jackson even came out of either of their names' mouths. Now, I will ask Kyrie and Kevin Durant this question. If Steve Nash was not interested in being a head coach, who was your option 1? Who's your option 2? Who's your option 3? I just want to know. Okay? Excuse me as I'm going through my notes. I want to make sure you guys understand where I'm coming from this. Now, as of this week, there are 5 African American head coaches. J.B. Bickerstaff for the Cleveland Cavaliers, Lloyd Pierce for the Atlanta Hawks, Monty Williams for the Phoenix Suns, Doc Rivers for the Los Angeles Clippers, and Dwayne Casey for the Detroit Pistons. Nate McMillan, who was the head coach for the Indiana Pacers, was fired. Alvin Gentry was fired, head coach of the New Orleans Pelicans. When you look at it face value, I understand. I get it. Because it's not... You do question the inequalities, particularly from their perspective as African American head coaches. You do look at it face value. Because there are coaches in basketball, football, in baseball to an extent, that we know should no longer be coaches. But see, here's the thing. It's not... I see where he's coming from, Stephen A. It's not about Steve Nash being hired. It's the system. I understand it. I get it. But here's the thing. When I look at, I just want to point this out. I said Alvin Gentry and Nate McMillan were fired. Alvin Gentry has missed the playoffs 11 times. He's made the playoffs 3 times. And those 3 times, those 5 years he coached the Pelicans, he's made the playoffs 1 time. Monty Williams, in the same argument that I'm making, who should be given credit for developing Anthony Davis into the player that he is today, got swept by the Golden State Warriors in the first round, by the way, is out the door. But had an injury-plagued team. Look at what he's done with the Phoenix Suns. That can't go unnoticed. 8-0 in the bubble. In my opinion, he's going to do some great things with that team in Phoenix. Dwayne Casey, Coach of the Year. I get it. Should he have been fired? Hell no. Because look who he faced in the Eastern Conference Finals. LeBron James. Nick Nurse comes in. Kawhi Leonard comes in. They win the championship. When you look at it, you go, damn. Okay. I understand that. Lloyd Pierce, I think is going to be okay with the Atlanta Hawks. Doc Rivers, we know who Doc Rivers is. Doc Rivers is a champion. He coached the Boston Celtics. He's got Paul George, Kawhi Leonard. Doc's going to be okay. Nate McMillan's been bounced off the first round 4 straight years as a head coach for the Pacers. And I mean, listen, in the same breath, Brett Brown for the Sixers has gotten fired because he got swept by the Boston Celtics. even though I think that there needs to be some equal blame for their demise in the first round. You know, Ben Simmons wasn't there. Joel Embiid, let's just keep it real, honestly, I think checked out. And he wasn't in shape. And then players like Josh Richardson and others not really talking about there's no accountability. So we know that they lost trust in their coach and that team needs to just be blown up. We know that. Okay? The point I'm trying to make is this. I'm not trying to sit here and say, well, black coaches, they do get opportunities, and look what happens. Listen, these guys aren't in a position where they're on crappy teams or these teams are in a rebuild mode. I get that. However, I'm a firm believer that it starts with the front office. Just as much as you hold blame for the coaches and players, hold the front office responsible. Because essentially, they are responsible for signing, drafting, and putting talent on the field, court, no matter what, to win a championship. The coach's responsibility is just to keep the chemistry in check and grow from the players, and hopefully the players can learn something from them. That's it. Now, when you look at Alvin Gentry and Nate McMillan, it's obviously time for a change. Now, who the next coach for the Pelicans and the Pacers and the 76ers are, I don't know. But I think to jump on this one signing, that's not right. That's not fair. Because, again, this is the player this is the coach that KD and Kyrie Irving wanted. And my question is, like I stated, if you're upset about that, call them out. Why aren't you saying anything, calling them out publicly about it? I'm going to move on. I'm going to talk about networking. And I think this is serious to be said. Do I believe white privilege exists? Yes. In this instance, no. Networking, I believe, honestly matters. It's who you know, who you connect with, and that plays a part. That plays a part no matter where you go. School, job, doesn't matter. Because I believe networking with people and building relationships get you different places. It gets your foot in the door. For example, not denying this, where I work, where I go to school, do you see examples of that? Absolutely. But networking matters. Steve Nash and Sean Marks know each other. They were former basketball teammates in Phoenix. Now, I wrote it down here, and I think this makes sense for me to say. When you look at Chris Paul, I'd say, probably maybe has like 5 years left on him as a player. Chris Paul is going to be a head coach one day in this game of basketball. Pass first point guards are more generally to get a head coaching job because they know the game. They're on-court coaches. Look at Rondo. Rondo could be a potential head coach. LeBron James could be a potential head coach. But see, here's the thing. Back to what his argument said, I get because of the times that we're in right now. I understand what he's trying to say. But when you're using that kind of argument, let's be careful to not water down what you're trying to say, StephenASmith. Because there are some people that are going to go, damn, like you got to pull the race card out this time again. Because let's keep it real, the race card gets pulled just about every damn day. We can point out numerous examples where it can be pointed out. That can't be denied. Now, I'm going to say this. When Steve Nash left Dallas to go to Phoenix. I believe his first year, I think they were like 20-69, something like that. The year he gets there, they get better. You don't think, Stephen A. Smith, that Steve Nash can help Kyrie and Kevin Durant grow as basketball players, can help not only them, but the others around them? Joe Harris, Spencer Dinwiddie, Jared Allen, Kalis LeVert. You don't think that he can help these two guys make the others better? You don't think he can do that? Do I think that Sam Cassell, Mark Jackson, could they do that? Sure. Let me just say this for the record, and I'm just going to say it. As much as I respect Mark Jackson, as much as I want him in the NBA as a coach, let's call it what it is. Because of where he stands with his religious views as a Christian, there are some people that disagree and were uncomfortable with his views. And particularly in the world that we live in today, that is what's kept Mark Jackson from getting a job as a coach in the NBA. Because of certain views as a Christian. He's entitled to that. Not going to change his views. That's where he stands. That's where he stands. I'm going to leave it at that. If Mark Jackson wanted to be a head coach, he would have said it. Mark Jackson is sitting back, calling games, and making money. Mark Jackson is living his life. Mark Jackson deserves credit for the job that he did in Golden State. Not denying that. Sam Cassell, we know the job that he did with the Wizards. I believe he plays a role in John Wall from when he came into this league. Even though these past couple of years with him being injured, I believe has played a role with John Wall's development. Ty Lue, I'm going to get into that because I have a question for you about Ty Lue, Stephen A. Okay? Now, listen. To kind of really honestly wrap this up, because I'm not going to keep y'all long. So let me close this out. These stars, these are player, I want you to understand, these are player-driven leagues. The NBA is a player-driven league. Listen, the type of coaches that we've seen in the 70s and 80s, they're being virtually, in the 90s, honestly, they're being virtually ousted. Because, let me use, for example, look at the Cleveland Cavaliers. Jim Boeheim was the coach for the Cleveland Cavaliers before J.B. Bickerstaff took over. Those guys did not like his system. Even though one can make the argument, they're young, how can I explain this? They could have used a guy like him, particularly someone like Colin Sexton, who I believe was going to be an all-star in this league someday. But there were players in that locker room that weren't feeling him and essentially got him fired. Now, I know that made no sense, but what I'm saying is that when you look at excuse me, I'm making sure I'm getting everything right on my notes. When you look at these stars as a player-driven league, it's something I call an easy pass. Magic Johnson for the Lakers, coached 6 games, I believe it was, before he stepped down. Became team president for the Lakers. Larry Bird, head coach for the Indiana Pacers. No coaching experience. Front office for the Indiana Pacers. Isaiah Thomas, head coach for the Knicks and front office for the Toronto Raptors. Look at Jason Kidd. Even though I believe, honestly, truthfully, Jason Kidd was handed a team where he had two aging stars in Paul Pierce and KG, Kevin Garnett, another star in Darren Williams, who was paid $98 million, but was virtually nowhere to be found, and then Joe Johnson, who was virtually carrying the team on his back. So when you sit here and you're saying that there are no coaches that are particularly black coaches that are not getting the type of fair share. I just gave you a couple of examples right there. I can give you more. Derek Fisher, who coached the Knicks, and yes, let's call it what it is. It is, even though we can make the case that it wasn't enough time. Listen, we know how dysfunctional the Knicks are. There's no denying that. But he had Carmelo Anthony, he had J.R. Smith, and he had Amon Shumpert. He had some veteran guys on that team. The Knicks are just not that great of an organization right now. Doc Rivers, when he was in Orlando, again, how can you sit here, StephenASmith, and say that there's no ways that African Americans are getting opportunities like this? Now, if Steve Nash was just some random person off the street with no experience, then you have a point. But this is a Hall of Fame point guard we're talking about. This is a two-time MVP we're talking about. This is somebody who I think, again, like I stated, is somebody that KD, Kevin Durant, and Kyrie Irving need. So let me ask you a question, Stephen A. Since obviously we can tell Steve Nash is not the guy you want, who's your ideal coach? Well, I mean, I already know the answer. Your ideal who's the ideal coach? Because the one thing that I want you guys to understand is this. It's not what StephenASmith wants. It's not what I want. It's what Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving want. This is the guy that they signed for. This is the guy they want. Let's see what happens. Let's give this a chance. But to really sit here and say that there's white privilege in this case, no. How can you sit there and say that when you have two franchise stars who signed for this, who want this guy as their coach? How can you say that? And especially when I gave you examples of Bird, Magic, Isaiah Thomas, Doc Rivers, Jason Kidd. How can you say that's white privilege when I gave you examples? Someone please tell me that. And what's funny, this proves that this is the type of power that we give to these players. And it's not just with basketball. It's with football and baseball too. Okay? Now, I'm going to say this. And I think it's important for me to say, listen, as much as I respect StephenASmith, he is wrong in this case. I disagree. Because I don't see where you can point there's white privilege in this. Steve Nash was a players consultant for the Warriors. He built a relationship with Kevin Durant. Listen, the relationship that he had in Golden State with Steve Kerr, we know this. We know it was not the greatest relationship. And I'm going to say this, and I think this matters. Mark Jackson got in the car. He put the keys in the ignition. Steve Kerr turned the ignition and drove the car away. Mark Jackson deserves credit for owning that team. Steve Kerr just drove the car and took it as far as he can go. Do I believe the Golden State Warriors are going to be back? Absolutely. Steve Kerr has no experience in coaching. But listen, we, like I said earlier, can't pull the race card out like this all the time. Let's see where this goes and let's give it a chance. Because listen, I am a firm believer that we definitely need more African American and minority coaches in college and pro sports. I'm a firm believer of that. But in these player-driven leagues, it's what these players want. It's not what StephenASmith wants. It's not what Nathan Snell wants. If that's what Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving want, that's their choice. And you have to respect that. Because I'm going to close out by saying this. Basketball acumen matters. And relationships matter. Again, does white privilege exist? Yes. Not in this case. I disagree with StephenASmith. And if you guys disagree with me, I'm sorry. I'm just telling y'all like it is. But we cannot. We have to give this a chance. I want to see what this looks like. For all I know, is next year they can win the NBA championship. But essentially, StephenASmith is mad. That's okay, Stephen A. You're upset because there's not a black coach coaching the Brooklyn Nets. That's okay. I understand it. He's a native New Yorker, not taking anything away from it. He loves his New York sports, not taking anything away from it. But let's see where this goes and let's give this a chance. Plain and simple. With that being said, if y'all liked the video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Listen, this was a little hard for me because it took me several times to record this. It just, hearing this the past few days, it bothers me that this is the type of argument that's being pushed, particularly in this matter. Again, my only question to you, Stephen A., if you have a problem with it, how come you're not calling out Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving? Because essentially, listen, Steve Nash has been put in this bubble, this cloud of white privilege. The moment, honestly, truthfully, is being taken away from him. Because, we kind of should be going, damn, Steve Nash? Like, okay, that's different. That's creative. But instead we're going, Steve Nash. And I get it. Listen, not the sexy pick that everybody wanted. I get it. But I do want to ask StephenASmith this question. Do you think that Ty Lue would have fit with a player like Kevin Durant? Because y'all let me know, didn't Tyronn Lue take like a leave of absence because he couldn't sleep and all this other stuff you were hearing? And we already know his relationship with Kyrie in Cleveland. We already know that. It's documented. Mark Jackson, I don't know. Sam Cassell, I don't know. Again, as I stated, I believe that there should be more opportunities for minorities and African Americans and minorities, particularly in coaching. I believe that. There should be more opportunities like that. But in this case, I'm sorry. I have to disagree. And my thing is, I just want to challenge Stephen A. to look at it from that perspective that I just gave. Some of y'all may actually agree where I'm coming from. Some of y'all may not, and that's okay. Because again, it's an opinion. We can agree to disagree. It's okay. So I'm real curious to see where this is going to go. But with that being said, hope everyone enjoys the rest of their weekend. Happy Labor Day. Stay safe. I'm out. Peace. Stay up.